Bubbly Steve is available for pre-order at shopclownfish.com. That's shopclownfish.com. You've got less than a month to pre-order this 15-inch plushie. Check them out. Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
Well. Spawn, King Spawn, #1 has record-breaking sales. Almost 500,000 copies.
Yeah, record-breaking sales for Image. Yeah, they're kicking everybody's ass. I'm sorry.
And this is basically one guy kicking everybody's ass, by the way. Todd McFarlane, who is making one hell of a comeback in the last couple of years. Todd, who left Marvel back in the early 90s to go do his own creator-owned stuff. He left at the height of his career at Marvel. He was selling a ton of Spider-Man comics.
Well, that's the best time to do that because people know who you are.
Go out on a high note instead of being like, oh yeah, that guy used to draw Spider-Man like 20 years ago. Yeah, whatever happened to him. So Todd McFarlane went, did Spawn. Spawn blew up in the 90s, had a movie, had a cartoon show, had lots of toys, had video games, and then kind of dropped off for a while. It was still around and it still sold in comic shops, but it wasn't like a huge deal. Now, fast forward to, I'd say probably 2 years ago, Spawn 300 actually outsold J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man #1.
Oh, J.J. Abrams and his son. Their fanfic. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then Todd McFarlane did a Kickstarter. He made like $3 million doing a reissue of the original Spawn figure with a comic book. So we had that. There's supposedly a movie in development. Then he talked about how he was going to expand and do the Spawn universe. I guess he's going to hire some people to come in and build a whole universe around Spawn. And people are like, yeah, that sounds okay. Well, here comes King Spawn and 500,000 copies. Marvel and DC at this point in time would kill. I know, right?
Kill for those numbers.
Yeah, but they'll gladly roll this into the comic book market sales and then say, oh no, the American comic book market's doing fantastic. They will fail to mention that it was mostly due to one book or due to the manga they're selling and counting as the American market.
Yeah, so if I were in charge over at Marvel or DC, if I were Disney or Warner Brothers, I'd be looking at this and being like, one fucking guy kicked all your asses. Not once, but twice.
And what did he do? He gave customers what they wanted.
Yeah. Now, this is on top of Boom not listening to Twitter and going out there with the Keanu Reeves Berserker comic, and they sold like 600,000 copies of that. I mean, this is crazy. So comics are selling if they're the right comics that people actually want to buy and read. And guess what? Marvel and DC, you're not doing it anymore. You're not doing it it doesn't matter how many billion-dollar movies you have if your comic books suck ass. And there's all kinds of it's all about
you block
stunts.
all your customers on social media because they didn't like the same things that your very fragile ego writers and artists liked or voted for.
Yeah.
That you already turned away a whole bunch of your fan base. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. And they have to be looking at this. Like, how come Boom Studios and Todd McFarlane can outsell, all of us combined? Like, what the hell are we doing wrong? And they won't look at themselves and be like...
No, they'll turn around and have the media do a bunch of hit pieces or something instead.
It's the alt-right. All the Nazis in the country, they went out and bought Spawn comics because Spawn's actually a hate symbol, even though he's a black guy.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They'll find a reason to make, be pissed about it and say it's bad.
So we're going to talk about that before we get into it.
Too late.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 230,000 subs. Talk about comics, talk about pop culture, talk about animation, whatever interests us that day. And we've been talking a lot about Todd McFarlane again. Now, I had quite the fascination with Todd McFarlane when I was a kid and a teenager because this was a guy who did not take no for an answer. He broke into comics at many years of trying, got tons and tons and tons of rejection letters. And even when he got into the industry, even when he was selling, people told me he sucked. They said his art wasn't that good.
He definitely has his own style.
He has his own style. People were like, your anatomy sucks. You shouldn't get paid at all for comics.
Have you seen the comics out today?
Yeah, right.
And he looks like a master.
Oh, yeah.
At anatomy comparatively. And they constantly busted Todd McFarlane because it's easy to take shots at people when they're at the top. And he rocketed to the top, and Spider-Man was selling like crazy. And then he, jumped ship and helped form Image. And here we are, 30 years later, and he's kicking the entire industry's ass again. Good.
Somebody needs to.
Good. The industry needs a wake-up call. And again, if I were the corporate owners of Marvel or DC, I'd be looking at this and be like, you can't give us any excuses anymore. That should be the X-Men. That should be Spider-Man.
Once upon a time, it was.
It was. I mean, it was not unusual for the X-Men to sell 500,000 copies a month, and now it's rare. So this is coming from Screen Rant. 30 years after initially debuting for Image Comics, the Spawn universe created by Todd McFarlane still remains a favorite. Image revealed the upcoming King Spawn #1 has broken pre-order records for the publisher, with the issue being the biggest selling monthly title in 25 years. So again, back in the early days, they were coming off their Marvel success. They were selling more copies, but that was like the early to mid 90s, right? The first chapter of King Spawn reportedly set to outsell any Marvel or DC Comics titles with nearly 500,000 pre-orders made before launch.
It doesn't even count the ones people are going to buy after it launches.
Yeah, right? Todd McFarlane's Spawn is one of the longest-running comic series as the writer and artist created the universe after leaving Marvel Comics and co-founding Image Comics alongside Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Will Portacio, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, Jim Valentino. All of them at the top of their game pretty much when they left, and I don't know what the hell happened to Eric Larson. He's just very sad. He's a very sad man now. He's not selling 500,000 copies of Savage Dragon. That's what the problem. He's so sad. In a push for creator-owned books, McFarlane created the Spawn universe, talking about how the first issue of Spawn sold more than 1.7 million copies, and the series still runs to this day. Yeah, he didn't feel the need to reboot it and reboot it and re-reboot it. It's just he never just stopped. He hired people to help him, but he never stopped. Had a number of spin-off titles, had a movie which I went to the theater to go see, weirdly enough, and then I forget most of it, except John Leguizamo being a clown. It was okay. It wasn't great. It was okay.
It wasn't my thing. It just really wasn't.
Yeah, with King Spawn #1 receiving 500,000 pre-orders, there's understandable excitement about the property's future ahead of the newest issue releases. And, again, what's going to happen, like you're saying, all these people, they're like, selling 1,000, 2,000 copies of a comic for some indie publisher are going to be like, that's me, that's my industry.
Mm-hmm. Look. Yeah, we're all winning. We're winning. It's fine. You need to shut up, YouTubers. You don't know what you're talking about.
We're all winners. Let me open this can of cat food. Have lunch.
That's not even funny. That makes me sad.
It is funny. It's not funny, haha, but it's just like, yeah, comics is the North American comic book market is a very uneven industry. Mm-hmm. You're either doing very, very, very well, you're doing pretty okay, or you're eating cat food. There's no in between. But this is interesting because, again, this builds the case for creator-owned independent content. This is why I think we're seeing so many of these DC and Marvel creators jump and ship for things like Substack, because they know that those companies are probably on borrowed time, or at least their careers are going to flatline.
Well, a lot of these people, to be fair, jump from platform to platform to platform until they see it's not going to go somewhere and jump someplace else.
Well, that's true.
If we're being fair.
We saw that with Webtoons too. We saw a lot of Marvel Comics people.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. And now they're jumping to this.
Yeah, because that's where the money
and they'll jump to something else in like 2 years.
But I mean, if you want the big bucks, it's got to be independent creator-owned stuff. If you're just drawing Spider-Man for Marvel, you might have a pretty cushy job, but you're never going to own it. Mm-mm. They could take your characters, they could go make $1 billion at the box office. You're not going to get a penny from that. Well, they might give you $5,000. That's what I heard. They give you a courtesy. So
they make all this money and they give you $5,000.
Yeah, like $5,000. Yeah.
Okay, that's nuts.
Yeah. Thank you.
I say hell no.
There you go, guys. Maybe a ticket to go see the movie.
So I've heard they don't even do that sometimes.
But you gotta fly yourself in.
They don't even give people credit sometimes in the credits at the end of the movie.
Yeah. So it's interesting. They talked to Todd McFarlane. This is what he said. He said it was a surprise. I'm usually pretty good at calculating what's going to happen. So I was thinking if we could get to that 300,000, that would be a home run. The pre-order sales just kept going and going and going. Even in the last day, we added nearly 100,000 in the last day. So I was like, what? For us, all we care about is what retailers order. Once we got that number, we're locked and loaded, and got to get the book to the printers. We got to put it on the press and go, yeah, it was a shocking number, and all of a sudden that puts us into rarefied air, because now it's not, oh God, look at that, like Spawn Universe being the biggest for Image Comics in the 21st century. This is the biggest one since 1994, when we were in our infancy.
And comics were way more popular.
Yeah, these are 90s numbers. Like, these are 90s numbers.
So it's completely possible to return to that if you give people what they want.
Yeah.
And you don't, pander to certain minority groups on Twitter.
Yeah, he said, look, you get to the point where you go, okay, over the last 25 years, what books have sold 500,000 copies? You can count the number on your fingers, and some of them kind of trick their way into those numbers. Star Wars, Marvel Star Wars Loot Crate.
Yep.
You start going, they did it, but it was a trick. That one is, he's not saying what it is. That one is a licensed product, so it's not even a company. I can make the argument that other than Action Comics 1000, there hasn't been an ongoing book that sold like it. There's one single issue I could argue. That's the only one that outsold it now. That would probably be Berserker, I'm guessing.
I don't know.
Because that was 600,000. A couple have bigger numbers, but they tricked their way into it. And I try not to use those tricks. This is basically just raw pre-orders.
Right, because it is true though. I mean, we've mentioned it many times before, like what they did with the the Star Wars comic and stuff like that. To try to say, oh, look, we sold his comics. No, you didn't.
Yeah, they can't show me a single Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, whatever book that sold as many as King Spawn 1. I took down the Avengers, right? Over 25 years and thousands of characters, who sold more than 500,000 copies?
It's because, back in the day, you would have been hard pressed. But now it's not hard. I mean, someone like him come right in and wipe the floor with them.
You're going to say wipe their ass.
No, I was going to say no. I was going to say kick their ass or wipe the floor. So kick their ass, wipe the floor, not wipe their ass.
No, and it's true. Comics is in such a
weakened... You can wipe your ass with the Marvel and DC
You
comics.
could. Comics are in such a weakened state right now that it's not that hard to come in, as long as you give the customers what they want. And this is why people are crowdfunding into the millions of dollars. They're giving customers what they want, and they're responding because they're not getting it from Marvel and DC. Again, if I were in charge, I'd be like, what are we doing wrong?
Oh, where to begin? People have been telling them what they've been doing wrong.
Years.
But they turn around and just block them on Twitter because they don't want to hear it. And that's what I'm saying. If they stop listening to this minority groups on Twitter, they're like, by that I mean like the ones that are on there screeching and, demanding the moon, but they're like a small percentage of the real audience. And but that vocal minority gets all the attention. If they stop listening to these dipshits, they probably could have pulled it out and reversed it. But now they're going down.
Yep. Stop listening to Twitter. Start listening to your customers, and you will sell a lot of comics. We're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.